Welcome into another episode of the Optimus NFL show. I am your host, Brad Bolt, and a really good one for you today. It's just a quick one with myself. Unfortunately, Dan had some scheduling issues, so this is just going to go over the first couple games of the NFL season. We are finally here, and we are all excited that we are here in this one. So, after a long few months, the games are here. We're all excited, and I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of the first couple games, and then Dan and I will do another episode where we'll go over the remaining games, who we picked, etc., etc. So, without further ado, this we're going to get into this. I'm going to give you the odds markets, the line, the over under, some touchdown scorers that Dan and myself are sort of liking in these matchups. So we start off with the very first game of the season. The Kansas City Chiefs are playing the Baltimore Ravens here. So it's in Kansas City, and Kansas City is currently the favorite at $1.67. And the Baltimore Ravens are at $2.27. So this is just going by Australian odds here for anyone who is an American listener. So Chiefs are the overwhelming favourites here, just in the head-to-head market. When we look at the line, the Chiefs are minus 2.5 here. So Ravens plus 2.5. They're at $1.95. That's a good-looking bet if you are thinking that the Ravens are going to potentially win. But mind you, if you were on the Ravens here, I would be just going straight for the money line. It's better odds there for you. Over under for this game is 46.5, which I feel like might be a tad high. This has a lot to do, obviously, first game of the season. Everyone's being able to, I guess, game plan for each other. I just think when we think back to that AFC Championship game, granted the teams aren't exactly the same, but they're very similar. It wasn't a high-scoring game at all. There's some really good defenses, some that were able to stifle these offenses. So I personally would probably be going the under in this game. I don't see it being a super high-scoring game to start with. I think it'll be a knockdown, drag 'em out type of game, which is sort of what you would come to expect for two really good offenses, two really good defenses, and it comes down to who's able to get stops is pretty much how I would be looking at this. So if we're going by picks, so I've got Dan's picks here. He was able to send them through to me before I recorded. Dan is all over the Baltimore Ravens here at the $2.27. I'm on the Kansas City Chiefs. So what we're going to do too is we're going to keep track of this. So we are using $5 bets here for all of these. So we'll do $5 on the winner and on touchdown scorers for each game. And we will tally these up each week and we'll try and see who will win the most money. And when we get into the more of the games where we have every game that we cover, Dan and I will then throw out some little multi bets that we like or some parlays that, touchdown scorers that we like. We'll each bring a couple touchdown scorers to this. Then we'll pick our best ones and we will go from there. So, yes, Dan has gone the Baltimore Ravens here. I've gone Kansas City Chiefs. So, if we were to both put $5 on this, I would win $8.35 overall, and Dan would be to $11.35 there. So that's where we've got just straight up. Also, too, just while we're at it, Dan and I we have a Pick'ems pool that's running on Sleeper. So if you're listening to this and you do want to get involved, reach out to myself, to Dan. Anyone in the Optimus team will get you a link to get you in. And look, if you happen to miss the first game or two, that is fine. It's just where we're going to be keeping our picks from week to week, and then that way we'll be able to have a competition to see who knows the most as we go on for this NFL season. So into the touchdown scorers. So Dan and I have both gone different people here, and we've done this with both the games that we're looking at. So, which was a surprise because I didn't know who Dan was picking when I made my picks and vice versa. So we'll start off with Dan's picks. His touchdown scorers that he's got going in this are Xavier Worthy for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's paying at $2.90 for a touchdown. Derrick Henry at $1.89. And then we've also got we're going to try and do this. We're going to do our guys we're expecting, and then maybe a outsider type of pick here. So Dan's outsider pick is Isaiah Likely at $6.50. So if we add the $5 bets for all of these, so Dan would win $14.50 if Xavier Worthy scores, $9.45 if Derrick Henry scores, $32.50 if Isaiah Likely scores. So if they all happen to score there and Dan just puts the $5 on each, he would win $56.45 there. Myself, I have gone two pretty standard ones and one that was probably even more of an outlandish pick, which will surprise Dan when he sees this later on. I went Isaiah Pacheco at $2.20 for the touchdown scorer. Lamar Jackson at $3.35 there. And this is the surprising one. McCole Hardman is $9 for a touchdown here. Now, I went with McCole Hardman because I was looking through some stats, trying to figure out who I liked, and I saw one that McCole Hardman has scored a touchdown in two of the Chiefs' last three regular season games against the Ravens. That was enough for me to go, do you know what? I might give it a shot because it could be a special teams touchdown. It could be like we saw in the Super Bowl. He comes in, has a play, and is wide open in the end zone. I just like this as a pick there. It's an outsider. That's why we're doing some of these rough picks there. If I look at what my potential winnings could be, Isaiah Pacheco would win me $11, Lamar Jackson $16.75, and McCole Hardman would be $45, which would put me at $72.75 for that one. One of the reasons why I went Isaiah Pacheco, he scored at least one touchdown in 7 of the last 8 appearances he has made. So he's been like, we're obviously dating this back to last season, but he has been a consistent in this Chiefs offense. And he's one of these guys who just seems to always be around that goal line. And if the Chiefs get near that goal line, Isaiah Pacheco is really hard to bring down. So he's a guy that I really like there. Looking at a couple of these other potential touchdown scorers, looking here, so with Dan's pick, Derrick Henry, he scored at least one touchdown in each of his 4 previous road appearances against the Chiefs. And Isaiah Likely, one of his other picks here, has scored at least one touchdown in 4 of the Ravens' last 5 regular season games. Now, the Isaiah Likely one for Dan, I can see it because Isaiah Likely, they might be trying to get more play out of this year, run some more 2 tight end sets with Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is there, which may limit his snaps that Isaiah Likely is playing. So if you are looking at playing any of these, look, it's a risk, but I don't hate that risk at all. So if we look at what we would win from this game. So if all of mine come in, so the Chiefs win, Pacheco scores, Lamar scores, and McCole Hardman scores, I'd be up to $81.10. And then if he has Baltimore win with Worthy, Henry, and Isaiah Likely score, he would be at $67.80. I won't go through this with every single game, but just because this is the first 2 games, we figured that, we would give this a shot for the first 2 games. And then once we move into week after week, we'll condense this a little bit and make this a little bit different. So this is going to be a really interesting game. It's a rematch of the AFC Championship game, as I mentioned. I'm not expecting a huge score in this game, but look, to be honest, if this ends up being one of these 30 to 28 type of games, it wouldn't surprise me. These 2 teams, I do think, have the potential to show back up in the AFC Championship game this year at the end of the season. 2 really good teams. The only thing that I think would keep them out of this that sort of range come the end of the year. I think they're going to be both in that role to be fighting for the AFC Championship game. I should say that is injuries. Injuries to me is the only thing that keeps these teams from being super successful and way up the top there from that. So, as I said, Kansas City, Dan's got Baltimore. Look at obviously these can change up from now up until game time. So I'm recording this on Thursday night in Australia at 7:10 p.m. This could change by the time the game starts, but as always, check your local markets for the best odds. But that's sort of where we are both heading in this game. So if we move on now to the second game of the season, is the Green Bay Packers versus the Philadelphia Eagles in Brazil. Now, Dan would have loved to have commented on this game. We'll get his thoughts when we do record our next episode. Both Dan and I here have picked the same team to win this game. So if we look at this, the over under for this game is 49.5. Now, to me, I would be going under on this one as well. I think just to do when you look at the travel, when you look at all of the other sorts of things that come into this game, it's one of those things to me that it's really hard to know what's going to happen. The first week of the season is obviously the hardest one to pick here. You just don't know how the teams are going to play. Are we going to get the Green Bay Packers from the second half of the season last year who pushed the 49ers in the playoffs, or are we going to get the early season Green Bay Packers? I'm expecting the second half of the season Green Bay Packers, but you never know. Same with Philly. Philly started off like a house on fire, and then everything went downhill from them from there. So which one are we going to get? Who knows? There has been obviously some changes with both of these teams. They both lost some stalwart players. The Green Bay Packers lose David Bakhtiari. Philadelphia has some retirements in Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox. So it's going to be interesting to see how these teams work out. And new players in your Saquon Barkley's. You've got a new coordinator in Kellen Moore. Green Bay has a new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. So it's going to be a very interesting game. So back to our picks, both Dan and myself have gone with the Green Bay Packers here. It's not a shock with Dan being a Packers supporter, but I really liked what I saw from that Green Bay team at the end of the season. So I'm not going to count them out just yet. But like I said, first game of the season, it's always really hard this first week. We need to try and figure out how these teams are going to play moving forward. So if we both put the $5 on this, we would both walk out with $10.85 for the win there on Green Bay. Now into touchdown scorers. We'll go with Dan again. So to start with, so Dan has picked Jalen Hurts at $2.08, Romeo Dubs at $3.50, and the rank outsider he has is Bo Melton at $7.75. So for those, $10.40, Dan would win if Jalen Hurts scores. Romeo Dobbs, $17.50, and Bo Melton, $38.75. Now, the reason why he's picked some of them, if we just have a look, Saquon has scored, not Saquon, sorry. Romeo Dobbs has scored a touchdown in each of the Packers' last 3 games when they have been the slight underdogs, which I know sounds a little bit odd, but there are certain things that you take into account when you are looking at the betting market. But I think that Romeo Dobbs is maybe not. It's close between the 4 receivers, but he started to. I've always thought that he's had Jordan Love's trust from the get-go due to when Jordan Love was playing in the preseason behind Aaron Rodgers. Romeo Dobbs was in that sort of role. So they got a bit of a chemistry working there. So I can understand. I actually really like Romeo Dobbs. This was one I was going to pick, and I changed my mind at the last moment. And I'm glad that Dan had this as his pick as well. So that's good there. Jalen Hurts, his other pick, has scored at least one touchdown in 7 of the Eagles' last 8 games as slight favorites as well. So once again, it's one of those things that the big talking point is with Jason Kelsey gone, is the tush push, is that going to work be as effective without him, or is it just down to the fact that Jalen Hurts can squat 600 odd pounds and is an absolute monster and really tough to tackle? So they're Dan's couple picks. There, Bo Melton, like we said, that's the one that's way, way out of the ordinary. It's the long shot, but with the way that this receiving core sort of works with Green Bay, I wouldn't be shocked because Jordan Love is happy to spread the ball around, so it wouldn't shock me at all if Bo Melton scores there. For me, I have gone with new Green Bay Packer Josh Jacobs at $2.15. I have Devonta Smith at $2.35. And my sort of outsider, which isn't really that much of an outsider, but a guy who I think is actually in contention as being maybe the best receiver on the Green Bay Packers team, Dontavian Wicks at $4.75. So if those guys with my $5, $10.75 for Josh Jacobs for the touchdown, Devonta Smith would be $11.75 and Dontavian Wicks $23.75. Now, Dontavian Wicks has scored at least one touchdown in 3 of his last 4 appearances, hence why I'm happy to throw a few dollars Dontavian Wicks' way there. He's a guy who, like I said, he was a 6th round pick, but I think he is actually in line to maybe be one of the best, maybe the best receiver on this Green Bay Packers team. So he was the reason why I went with him there. Devonta Smith, I don't have any of those other sorts of stats for Devonta Smith. It's just a vibes feeling. He signed the new contract. So did AJ Brown. But I just feel like if there is a spot where Devonta has a chance. Excuse me, there had a bit of technical difficulties as I had a bit of a coughing fit there. Devonta Smith is a guy who, depending on how this Green Bay defense plays, if they're looking at maybe having Jair Alexander follow AJ Brown around, I like the matchup of Devonta Smith on the second corner, whoever it might be. But look, it's like I said earlier, start of the season, it's really hard to pick who we like, who's going to score until you've seen a game or two to try and figure this out. So, like I said, purely a bit of a vibes play. And Josh Jacobs, same sort of thing. If Green Bay is as good an offense as what we're expecting, I'm expecting to have a few attempts inside the 5-yard line. If Josh Jacobs gets in there, I know this Philly defensive line is really good, but it's within the 5-yard line. I like the ability of Josh Jacobs to maybe be able to score there. I can't see a line on this game at the moment. I think it was only about 1.5 to 2.5, but yeah, I can't actually see. Let me see. It's 2.5. So Philadelphia is 2.5 points favorite. Green Bay is plus 2.5 there. So, like I said, Green Bay is the underdog here, but both Dan and I are of the same thought process that Green Bay actually has the chance here to pull off the upset in Brazil. So if we just go quickly with what we sort of did earlier, if Dan has Green Bay win with Hurts, Dobbs, and Melton score, he would be at $77.50. And myself, if I have Green Bay with Josh Jacobs, Devonta Smith, and Dontavian Wicks, would be at $57.10. So if we add all of those up, if Dan happens to put his $5 on Baltimore, Green Bay, then the 6 touchdown scorers, that all comes in, he'd be up $145.30. Don't expect any of that because it'd be nearly impossible for that to work. If I happen to get what my guys, I'd be at $138.20. So only about $6 or $7 difference there. The two of us, we both like there. So if I was going to be going a touchdown scorer mix between what Dan and myself had, like my favorite. For me, I like the Romeo Dobbs and the Dontavian Wicks picks. And I also probably do go with the Jalen Hurts one. So for me, just looking at that on Sportsbet here in Australia, if I mix those three together, that comes out to $29. So 29 to 1 for Romeo Dobbs, Dontavian Wicks, and Jalen Hurts to score. So if we put $5 on that, you'd be up $145. So that would be my, if I was going to be doing a same game for that, that would be my one there. If I was looking at the Ravens, I'm probably, like I said, I'm going Pacheco, Derrick Henry, I reckon. So yeah, I reckon I'd go Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, oh, and then this one's the tough one. I'd probably go maybe actually Lamar. So those three guys combined, it's $12.75 for those three guys, and that's a $5 bet on that. You'd win $63.75. So if I'm going to do a cross game multi for my three favorite picks over the two games, I will probably go Derrick Henry, Dontavian Wicks, and Romeo Dobbs, and throw those three together, you're at $29.29. So a $5 bet puts you at 146.47 there. So that's my cross game one. I wouldn't necessarily do that. Cross game ones are really quite hard, especially when you start looking at things that can change between when the first game start, when the second game start. But the fact that there's a day between them, it's really difficult because you might be able to have one part of the leg hit early, then you go with the second one, and who knows. So look, I'm just going to leave it there. That's a quick one for us today. As I said, they're our bets. Dan and I will be keeping track of this at the end of the year. We'll be able to have a look at how many units we spend throughout the year, how much we would come out on top. We will then give you our picks that we have for the remaining games. And as I mentioned, we have got a pick and pull on Sleeper as well. So if you would like to get involved, please get in touch with Dan or myself or any of the Optimus crew, who will be able to direct you in to get into this competition, and you'll be able to just join in, have a bit of fun with Dan and myself. So on behalf of myself, Dan, who isn't here, all of the Optimus team, thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to going through the rest of that amazing week one slate. That now that we are finally here, we are so eager, keen, looking forward to it, and we can't wait to see you then. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.